Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Joe, and welcome back to the Inside Our Phillies podcast. It's been a little while, but glad to be back here once again today, as the Phillies come off of a 2-1 series loss against the Cincinnati Reds, Monday through Wednesday. So Monday night, weird start times this series, but Monday night they pulled out a 4-1 win, and then they had a 6-1 loss on Tuesday before getting shut out 8-0 on Wednesday. So not the best series for the Phils, but they're coming off of a pretty good stretch in general. So I think most people are still feeling okay. But we're going to welcome in Should Have Had Giles to the podcast. How's it going, man?
Going pretty good. I'm feeling pretty great after that road trip. It's a disappointing end in Cincinnati, but getting, the wins in Texas, it feels really good. They haven't won there in 11 years, so finally winning a series down there was excellent. I mean, I remember when I was like 12 listening to the last time they won a game in Texas, so pretty awesome. And,
Yeah,
bad series, ended bad road trip. Good road trip, but ended badly, but overall still
sure,
good
it's still
time.
going on. They're in
Mhm.
Washington today, so the
Yep,
midst of the longest road trip that
that's
they'll
right.
have all season, 10 games. But yeah, let's jump into every single game of this series, and we'll start by discussing, exactly what happened on Monday. Schwarber hit another home run in this game. Schwarber's looking pretty good.
Yep.
Romano got the win, and Rabbit, who I think is actually a pretty good pitcher. I think they just used him too long. He got the loss. And really a great start by Taijuan Walker. So what did
Mhm.
you think about the game on Monday night?
I thought it was pretty great. Andrew Abbott, he's outperforming himself a little bit, but he, like you said, he is legitimately a very good pitcher. I'm not super upset that they had trouble with him. That's just going to happen from time to time. They still won the game. Taiwan Walker looked good again, which he's done pretty much all season. David Robertson, I believe, made his first appearance of the
It
season in that
was.
game, and his movement I thought looked pretty good. He had a little rough start to the inning, but he got it back under control. His cutter looks like it's still moving a lot and has good location to it. So it doesn't look like David Robertson. It's what some people were kind of worried about was David Robertson was just going to be cooked when he came up here. And it looks like his time in AAA. Again, it's one outing, but I think his struggles in AAA were just sort of spring training things where he's just working on a specific pitch each outing. So I'm optimistic about Robertson from that game.
That's a good point. Robertson, one hit, one walk, but I feel like that's kind of just David Robertson. He's never been the kind of guy to, get through innings in a clean way. Picked up a strikeout in the innings, so
Yeah,
we like to
as
see
long as he
that.
gets through the inning, as long as he gets through it.
What did he think about how the Reds were pulling out all the stops to impress Kyle Schwarber? It was interesting. They had his dad and his childhood coach throw a first pitch in the series, and there's been a lot of talk about Kyle Schwarber maybe returning home and going to Cincinnati in the off season. What do you think about that?
I don't see the Reds as being a team that is going to shell out that amount of money for like Kyle Schwarber. And that might just be me bias as like a Philly fan and a big market fan, but I think it's more a sort of how we treated Mike Trout when we sucked, or just how we treat Mike Trout in general. He's kind of the hometown guy, and people like him because of that. I don't think there's really a super large chance that they come in and snatch up Kyle Schwarber over the Phillies. And people, there were some people I saw saying it was they're colluding, it's collusion or whatever with Kyle Schwarber, and I don't think that it is. It's just it's the hometown guy. That's all it is.
Yeah, I guess the one point that I would bring up is that you really don't see DHs get big contracts.
No.
I guess, Shohei Ohtani is technically a DH, but he's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So you got like Yordan Alvarez on a 6-year, $115 million deal, and he signed that at age 24. It bought out RBers and stuff like that.
Yep.
Masataka Yoshida's on a 5-year, $90 million deal. That going through his age 34 season. And then you actually have Schwarber, as Spotrac is saying, is the fourth biggest contract already for DHs. And this is a deal that he signed at age 29. So he was playing through his age 32 season, I believe. So his next year's, signing it at age 33. I question how much a 33-year-old DH is going to be
Yes.
worth.
Yeah.
The other, older DH contracts recently, you got Ozuna signed at age 30, 465. Jock Peterson, 2 years, 37. And obviously, Schwarber's going to get more than 2 years. but I feel like you're looking at probably like 4 years, 100 or something like that, which, gets into the realm of where a mid-market team could probably afford that.
I just don't buy, like you said, I don't buy this whole he's going to get some mega, Hiroshima bomb style contract that's going to blow up the market. Like you said, he's in his mid 30s, and let's be real about Kyle Schwarber. We both love him. I think everybody in the fan base who's a rational human being loves him, but his tool is power. That's basically his tool, and power hitters in their 30s, by and large, tend to fall off a cliff very, very quickly once they start to decline. You saw that with guys like Chris Davis and Ryan Howard. So I think there's going to be a lot of caution from some teams on Kyle Schwarber in terms of getting him like a 5-year deal or something. So like you said, I think the length is going to be there, but with how much he's hitting and how crazy contracts have been getting in terms of their inflation, I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could get maybe $30 million a year.
30
In this
million a
free
year would
agency.
scare me a little bit. 30
Yeah,
a
that would
year,
scare me too.
like, we all love Kyle Schwarber. I think everybody that's a Phillies fan does, but you gotta worry at some point, like
Yep.
paying a DH a lot of money. I don't know. Like, you don't have an easy way to replace him. It's the same problem with JT. Like, how do you replace JT? You can't really do
Mhm.
that right now.
And to be fair with JT, it's not like, oh, well, there's nobody better. JT's legitimately still a very, very good baseball player. So, I think as long as they're not re-signing him for 3 or 4 years, which I don't think they will, then I don't think it's a case of we don't have anywhere else to go. I think that it would be the case, but that isn't why they'd be re-signing him. I think it's just because JT's legitimately still very, very good at the catching position. But
Yeah,
I agree with you on Schwarber. There's no one else to turn to really with Kyle Schwarber.
yeah, and Taiwan Walker, he pitched 6 innings. You know, only allowed 1 run, only 2 strikeouts. So a very Taiwan Walker-esque start. But his
Mhm.
ERA for the year is down to 3.39. I am so confused by Taiwan Walker this year. What are you thinking about him?
So he's not as good as he's pitching. Like I just watching him. And this is not to say that I think he's bad this year. I think he's been perfectly serviceable, uh, and he's been an asset to the team. So I think he's out pitching himself a little bit right now, out pitching his peripherals a lot, but he's not like 2022 Bailey Falter, where he should have like a 5 ERA and he's pitching to a 3 or something.
Do you know what his
Um,
FIP is? Do you want to take a guess?
is it like high fours?
It is 485 and a whip of
Yep.
about 1.294 is his
So
whip.
probably about a 5 starter. So, you know, that's still a massive improvement. People got to realize that's still a massive improvement from where he was in 2024, where he was just totally unusable in any role.
Yep,
So,
last year he had a FIP of
yeah,
about 7 and a whip above
hmm
1.7. So
yeah, he was nightmarishly awful last year. Like, I actually got to the point of feeling bad for the guy with how much he was struggling last year. But this is just goes to show that you really can't have too much pitching depth on a team. Like, can we imagine if the Phillies had done what a lot of the fan base wanted to do, which was just straight DFA Taiwan Walker immediately in the offseason without a second thought or like before spring training, and how much worse this pitching staff would be looking right now without Taiwan Walker.
he's
Just something to think about.
he's played a massive role, and I think also notably that contract is probably tradable for next year.
Yep.
Contract is
I
probably
think
tradable.
I think you might have to still eat some of it because I don't think there's enough there to just get
Yeah,
something out of it. But I don't think it's immovable like uh, somebody else on the roster who I'm
yeah.
sure we're going to talk about.
Well, you brought it up, so let's bring him up right now. And I'm guessing you're talking about Nick Castellanos, who has been
Ah,
on an absolute tear in the worst way possible. Um, what is
dude,
there even to say about him at this point?
there's nothing to say. I mean, I'm at a loss for words at this point with Nick. I remember, so I just want to start everybody out just so we can see my perspective and my evolution of my perspective on Nick Castellanos. And I think I said this in an early episode. I wanted Castellanos over Schwarber in 2022. I wanted him over Schwarber, and obviously we see how that has worked out. But I have not always been a massive Castellanos like critic or hater, And after 2022, which was a nightmare, people just, I think, sort of forget, they've memory hold how awful 22 was for Nick Castellanos, and those playoffs were as a whole for him outside of the LDS where he was okay. But and I was like, okay, we'll give him a shot next year in 2023. And the first half it looked like, okay, we're going to get the Nick Castellanos we paid for in 2023. I was back on Nick Castellanos train. He fell off after the All-Star break really hard, then kind of came back in the last month, had a great, LDS against the Braves, and then had that just infamous 1 for 26, I think, against the Diamondbacks in the League Championship Series. And then 2024, just that start to the season was something else. And then sort of recovers it in the last half of the season, becomes sort of a replacement level player in the aggregate for the whole season. Now we get this year, and he is, by Fangraphs, he is way worse than he was in 2022. 2022, I think he was negative 0.2 on the F4 for Fangraphs. This year, he's a negative 0.6. For a guy who has 400 plate appearances in just the outfield, like Nick Castellanos, and has basically been around a league average hitter this season, that is just outstandingly, horrifically awful. I don't really have, I just don't have the words to talk about it. It's unwatchable, is what I'm going to say right now. It's unwatchable. And I've said this, of course, in the post, which got plenty of attention, but we're approaching the point where if they are serious that this is the year they want to be all in and put all their chips on the table, they have to start at minimum either platooning Castellanos with somebody or taking him out in the 8th or 9th inning when they have a lead in right field for a defensive substitute. They have to do something with Nick Castellanos, because you just can't do this for the playoffs. You cannot have a guy who's this much of a net negative every time he goes onto the baseball field on your team come October. I'm sorry. I know there are people who are, they reminisce happily about NLDS Game 3, Game 4 against the Braves. He did well last year. I reminisce happily about that too. I have good memories about that too. I loved watching those moments just as much as everybody else. But the Nick Castellanos we have right now is literally unplayable. He is the 4th worst everyday player in baseball. He's awful. And it hurts me to say, I wish he wasn't, because it would be better for the Phillies. And I hope he makes me eat rocks over saying this, and he goes and, breaks the cover off the baseball.
He won't.
The rest of the season. Yeah, he won't. But he won't. He won't. It's not going to happen. He sucks.
His stats since July 1st. Since July 1st, Nick Castellanos average 192 on base percentage since July 1st, 216. Slugging 315. So since July 1st, that's an OPS of 532. And I know a lot of people say that Nick Castellanos is streaky. And to some extent, that is true. But you look at the record of him going years long now at this point. I think he's at -1 Baseball Reference WAR. That's more than a streak. That's
been an effective
player.
I just want to say two things. One is just factual. The second one might be a little harsh, but it's just how I feel about him. So first, there's streakiness. Raul Ibanez in 2009 was streaky.
Rhys Hoskins.
But Hoskins was streaky. Herrera pre-2019, he was streaky. But they were all good players, that I mentioned. Again, Herrera pre-2019. They were all actually good baseball players. At the end of the season, they had more positives than negatives. Nick Castellanos just sucks, okay? There are bad players who have hot streaks, who can go on stretches where they're actually good for no reason. Think like Cody Ross in 2010. I'm sorry for saying that name. But, he's not streaky. He just sucks. And I'm tired of hearing on broadcasts and all this stuff that it's just the ebbs and flows of the season. It's not. It's not the ebbs and flows of the season. He just blows. He's awful. I hate watching him play baseball. I'm going to go to my second point here. Does Nick Castellanos think at all when he's at the plate? Does he realize that he is not going to see a single fastball, likely, center cut or inside in the strike zone the entire at bat, and 80% of the pitches he is going to see, it feels like, are cutters, sliders, or curveballs down and off the plate. I mean, does his brain think at all when he's at the plate? Because sometimes it just seems like, oh, it's 2-1. I'm going to swing at this slider a foot off the plate with a guy on third and one out, pop it up to the second baseman, and ruin the opportunity for that guy of scoring. I mean, it's unbearable. It's awful baseball. Like Ruben talks about, fundamental baseball, getting the guy in from third or moving the runner over, and just drives people walks. It's all he talks about. It feels like sometimes. But dude, Castellanos is horrific at it. He's just I'm gonna stop before I start just swearing about how terrible he's so awful. I can't. It makes me angry.
For everything that people say about Max Kepler, I mean, Nick Castellanos is definitely a worse defensive player and probably a worse hitter as well. Nick Castellanos, in my opinion, it's ridiculous that he has complained that he has when he gets pulled out. He's lost the right, I think, to play every day. This is, at this point, so far away from an everyday baseball player. And the Phillies continue to hit him in the middle of the lineup, which just doesn't make much sense to me.
I said recently to somebody about Kepler and Castellanos. Kepler looks like a guy who knows what he's supposed to be doing, but he's just not good at doing it. Castellanos looks like a guy right now who doesn't know what he's doing. That's what he looks like at the plate. And, I get it. He's being paid the money. He's in Major League Baseball. He has some level of talent. But, dude, Kepler is just below average at fielding, slightly below average on base running. He's a bad hitter. Castellanos right now is a below average hitter, and he is a worst in the league fielder and a near worst in the league base runner. It is inconceivable to me that he is still getting everyday playing duties.
Well, it's at the point where it makes me lose trust in Rob Thompson for continuing to play him every day. It makes me lose trust in Dave Dombrowski for not stepping in and putting an end to this. It's just ridiculous.
And I'm a Thompson defender. I'm a Thompson defender too. I've defended Thompson to the death on certain issues, like continuing to use Max Kepler or continuing to use platoons early in the season with Weston Wilson when he was really struggling. And I've defended him on all these issues. I cannot defend him on this at all. If this does not change come mid-September, or if God forbid they lose a damned playoff game, pardon my French, they lose a playoff game because they left Nick Castellanos in the 8th or 9th inning in a one-run game, and there is a ball that he misreads, and they lose the game because of that, I might need to go to an insane asylum. Because it's the most blinding, it's the most obvious move to take this guy out. At minimum, take him out in late innings for a defensive sub. And they refuse to do it because of his ego, I'm assuming. It's just... He's not a good teammate. I'm tired of pretending that he's a good teammate this. Nope. If this team would 100% be benching him for defensive sub if he wasn't going to throw a hissy fit and melt down over it. They 100% would. If they weren't, if they don't, if they wouldn't, they are a bad organization that is incompetently run. There is no positive way to look at this here where nobody's at fault.
Yeah, I'm with you. But before we go too far into Castellanos, let's move on to the much happier topic of Brady Singer throwing 6 shutout against the Phillies. Ranger Suarez kind of fell apart in Game 2 of this series on Tuesday. His stat line doesn't look great. 5 1/3 innings, 6 runs, only 3 strikeouts. Ranger Suarez is kind of doing what he always does and just kind of falling apart
at the end of the season. I think everybody is kind of resigned at this point that Ranger's probably not coming back next year. And I don't think this should, hurt Ranger's legacy as a Philly. He's been a really great player since he's, been here. He's been the opposite of Castellanos. He's done literally anything this team has asked him to do, be in the bullpen, be a long man, be a closer, just be a swing guy, be a starting rotation guy. He's done anything they've asked of him. He's been such a good soldier in his time here, but they should not re-sign him for a large contract.
This rotation, when you take out Ranger, because Ranger's a question mark, Wheeler's kind of a question mark right now, and we'll get more into that later. You have a rotation that is kind of teetering a little bit. I was saying this last week, and I think that I could see an outcome where, a month from now, we're panicking about this bullpen heading into the postseason, and I don't want it to get to that point, but I feel like it's becoming more and more likely by the week. I think Ranger, like, he needs a break. When Nola comes back, I
Yeah.
think somebody needs to get phantomized, and I don't know if it's him, if it's Wheeler, if it's anybody else, but like Ranger has to be in a
So
major consideration for that.
So Wheeler for me is like I said with you earlier in the year with Harper, where I have such a long leash on Wheeler that it's going to take a lot more than what he's struggled with recently to sort of make me say he needs a timeout and anything of that sort. I think the guy out right now is Ranger. What it feels like right now, frankly, it's at least with the pitching staff, not with the hitting as much. It feels like, or bullpen. It feels like we are rewatching sort of the plot line of the 2024 pitching staff, where if you remember, the 2024 staff started the year off, it was like, oh my God, this is as good or better than the 2011 staff. Ranger's going to win a Cy Young. This Chris Sanchez looks amazing. Zack Wheeler, he's right there with Cy Young talks. Nola's usable. And then sort of later in the year, Nola started to wear down a little bit. So did Ranger. And Wheeler kind of had an iffy spot in the middle end of the year. And we're sort of back in that same situation here. It's just going to be how good is Nola when he comes back. If Nola comes back and Nola is just, 3.7 ERA guy and, a above average major league pitcher, the rotation's fine. The rotation can be fine with two aces at the top, Aaron Nola, and then like Luzardo or Suarez. The fourth starter isn't super important. People need to remember the Phillies made a World Series without a fourth starter in the playoffs in 2022. Is that ideal? No, obviously not. But it's not really the end of the world at this point. And especially with Wheeler, I have so much trust in the guy.
Well,
I think he's just going through it right now.
So you just answered the question we got from Amphibious Bean on Discord, who was asking if our concerns for Zach are lessened by a statement that the shoulder stiffness is behind him. If not, are they pushed firmly into the red with his velocity being back down, way down across the board? For me, with Zack Wheeler, I kind of have the opposite take of you. He is Zack Wheeler, and I'm not as concerned as I would be if this was anybody else. But I think that he is, at this point, a major question mark. Some of this is probably coming from my own experience now, where literally right before this podcast, I had physical therapy on my shoulder, which is just unbelievably messed up. I have the stiffness, I have the pain, and I had a clean MRI. Doctors think that I have a tear in my labrum still, but whatever. Until I see Zack Wheeler pitching like Zack Wheeler, which he hasn't for about a month at this point, I am getting more and more concerned every single start that something is wrong.
I'm going to play devil's advocate for myself here. I remember this is just sort of pointing out the similarities here. And this is probably going to just ignite panic when I say this. I remember in 2013 when Halladay was struggling at the start of that season, the first season I ever really followed. And it was all the same issues. So his velo was down a couple miles an hour. He didn't really have any idea where the balls were going when he threw the pitches. And, I don't think it's as dramatic with Wheeler right now. And with Halladay, I believe it ended up being a rotator cuff injury. But, I think if you give it a couple more weeks and it's still looking like this, then I will be right there with you in terms of being seriously concerned. As of right now, I think it's a little bit of wear on him. I think they should potentially, you mentioned before we started the show, about maybe 6-man rotation. I think they should absolutely go to that if possible.
Well,
but
they did announce that they're going to the 6-man rotation just like maybe 30, 40 minutes ago. At least one time through, they are going to be going to the 6-man. They didn't commit to it past this one time through the rotation. But yeah, I'm with you, especially as you head into September and you get the extra, pitcher that you can have in the bullpen. Yeah, the 6-man rotation all of a sudden becomes like a lot easier to tolerate. You don't have to have quite as much strain on the bullpen. It probably means that Joe Ross is here to stay, just because he's the guy that can throw a couple innings. And if you have a 7-man bullpen, then you need somebody that can throw extra innings.
Yep.
But I think there's bigger problems in this bullpen than Joe Ross, and that's Jordan Romano. Jordan Romano, he has like barely thrown. I know he threw 2 times in this series, but I think I saw something like in the 16 days prior to this series, he threw 17 pitches or something crazy like
Yeah.
that. And obviously, he allowed 4 runs on Wednesday night, grand slam. His ERA for the year is above 7 still, and we're halfway through August. It seems like that time is up, right? Like maybe when Nola gets up, which will be on Sunday, and they have to go to the 6 man, kick somebody out of the bullpen to make room. Romano's probably that guy, right?
Yeah, probably. Listen, if this was if we just threw out say like roles in the bullpen or whatever, it's probably between Romano and Lazar for me, because there was a thing they mentioned, I think it was on the ESPN broadcast recently, that like 75% of his outings are scoreless, but then the ones that aren't scoreless are just nightmarishly awful. And I think it's going to come down to a team decision of, are those scoreless outings worth the awful outings in low leverage situations? I think they probably end up saying, I really don't want to make a guess. I think either guy could go,
Well,
because
Lazar can give
man,
you multiple innings.
yeah, that's the thing. That's why I'm saying disregarding the roles. So I don't know. I think the team is going to be kind of hard pressed to get rid of Romano. Less so now that they have Duran, because that's just another guy who could give them a leverage inning if they need to. But I
Romano's done.
see
He
yeah,
has
Romano,
nothing
he's
left.
done. He's bad, but I don't think he is the problem on the team right now. I tend to not really be bothered too much by low leverage bullpen guys, when the bullpen as of right now, just as is pretty well set to go for the playoffs. So he sucks. It's just kind of whatever to me. It's not my big concern with the team right now. If they
For a
cut him, they cut
bullpen
him. If they don't cut him, oh well.
for a bullpen pitcher to have negative 1.1 WAR
Yeah,
is incredible. Like you never see
yeah,
bullpen pitchers have less than negative 1 WAR, but
yeah. It's
Romano's
pretty
done it.
awful.
I've talked about this a couple times, his ERA by month on this show, but let's just
Yep,
go over it
it's
one more time because it
pretty
hasn't really
awful.
gotten better. March
Nope.
9, April 1296, May is one good month 253, June 727, July 519, and August his 4 appearances so far in the month 1350 is ERA. So there's no really
Yep.
trend of improvement there. Romano is just it is what it is. But at least finish up Tuesday. The Phillies did score 1 run. Bryce Harper, a little bit of power there in the 9th inning in the most like junk time home run of all time.
Yep.
So the Phillies did score in 2 innings in this series at least. So that's worth
Yep.
something because on
And
Wednesday they got shut out. Wednesday
mhm.
they got shut out 8-0. The pitcher for the Phillies was obviously Chris Sanchez, who didn't look quite like himself, but still had a quality start. 6 innings, 6 strikeouts, 3 runs. Um, any real thoughts? I mean, this was just a game where Hunter Green pitched really, really good. Hunter Green is so good. Um, he got beat by a good pitcher, and I don't know if there's too much more else to say about that than what happened on Wednesday.
With Hunter Green, I just want to say that I remember somebody posted this in the game thread about like his Sports Illustrated cover back like when he was 17 or something. And I was like, I remembered seeing him on Sports Illustrated. Like he hits the ball like 800 feet and throws 100 miles an hour. Oh my God, this kid's amazing. I was like, wow, that's cool. I mean, hope we see that guy again. And I'd never realized that was Hunter Green, or just forgot about it. And he's so electric and talented, and I'm just not too perturbed by the Phillies having issues with him. It is what it is. It's going to happen. Good pitchers shut down good lineups. Uh, it doesn't really say anything about this offense. This offense has been mashing for about a month and a half now. I'm not super concerned about it. Just even looking at their last 10 games, they've been really solid in terms of the runs scored. I really don't. I'm sort of a person where I don't care, I guess, how many innings they're scoring runs in, as long as they are scoring a good amount of runs per game. Sort of like basically getting 4 runs a game or so, I'm usually pretty happy with. But
It's more
yeah,
more variable. Like I'm a
yeah,
little more worried going into the postseason when you rely on the
hmm
big inning instead of the consistent, you know, gnawing away, run there, 2 runs there.
hmm
Because boom or bust, especially in like a wild card series of 3 games or a division series of 5 games. Like if you don't boom, then that's it. You're done. It's a less consistent way of going through it. But one thing that the Phillies really do have to their advantage is the Mets just completely falling apart.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Mets all of a sudden now, I guess the Phillies helped out a little bit here because the Reds are now 1 game behind the Mets for the 3rd wild card. Out of nowhere. Like, it just came absolutely out of nowhere. You have to feel a lot better if you're a Phillies fan about winning the division just because, I mean, the Mets look done.
They're dead. They look like they're dead. I think what was happening for a lot of the season was they were their pitching specifically was outperforming their career, like their career stats by a mile. Like you saw guys like David.
They were all like pitching a ERA or run lower than their FIP, which is sustainable. It doesn't happen long term.
Like David Peterson was like pitching out of his mind. I mean, it's David Peterson. Come on, I never really bought that they were as good as they were playing. It was annoying, and it's like, are they just going to do this all season? But I never thought they were as good as they presented themselves as. It's the Mets. I kind of always expect some kind of hysterical meltdown collapse from the Mets at some point in a season. But, it's certainly very enjoyable to watch. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. I will not feel bad for any Mets fan ever. As my dad said, Mets players eat little kids' fingers when they win. So, I feel no sorrow for the Mets losing baseball games.
I mean, at this point, right, like, Lindor's had a really rough second half of the year.
Yep.
Alonso's been bad really ever since, like, June. Like, the Mets have just been built really, really badly. And if I was a Mets fan, like, I would just be upset at Stearns for, like, allowing this to happen, because there were pitchers available to sign in the offseason this year. Obviously, like, Corbin Burns was the big guy starting pitcher. He got hurt. But you look, lower down, and there were plenty of avenues for the Mets to be able to make their starting rotation better. But they signed Holmes, and they already have double the innings that he threw any inning before because Clay Holmes was a bullpen pitcher before. You're relying on like Paul Blackburn. Like, I don't know. Like, the Mets have, at a point where they also have an aging core, they've kind of messed themselves up. The Mets, I think, are in quite a bit of trouble, and I think they're going to miss the playoffs at this point. I have a hard time seeing them.
I don't want to count them out because I don't want that to come back and just sort of feel like karma biting me in the ass. There's a lot of season left to go. They can obviously turn this around in a heartbeat, and they're talented enough to pull off 10 wins in a row. I don't think anybody's doubting that, but I don't think that they are super likely to win the division at this point. I'm going to check Fangraphs real quickly here, but their odds are. You can.
The Mets have the. Go ahead.
The odds for the division, by the way, for the Phillies right now is 87%. The Mets are at 12.6%. So in the Mets playoff odds, compared to the Phillies, who are 99.2%, the Mets are only, in air quotes, at 78.6%. You could see this sort of coming a little bit because the Mets. My dad sent me a text, and it was the Mets' strength of schedule was like number 5 for the rest of the season, and the Phillies was like number 17.
Yeah, so it's number 9 for the Mets for the rest of the year. Number 9 for the Mets for the rest of the year. Number 19 for the Phillies. Part of the reason the Mets probably still have like a, all things considered, good chance to make the playoffs is because the Reds actually have the hardest schedule for the rest of the season. But I don't know. If the Mets keep playing like this, they're going to be in a fight before they know it. They already are in a fight.
Yeah.
One separating them in Cincinnati.
I just want to say that as of right now, thankfully, it looks like the nightmare scenario of the Marlins coming out of nowhere and making it into the playoffs and, doing some Marlin BS in the playoffs is thankfully done. They were at 500 there like a week ago or something. So, the Phillies are basically by themselves in the division right now. It's their division to lose, absolutely. They can still lose it, but I don't think it's super likely. But just don't take the foot off the throat of the Mets right now.
Well, what matters a lot is the Phillies getting a bye. At this point, I mean, the Brewers are kind of running away with the number 1 seed in the National League. 7 games separate them and the Phillies. The Phillies are half a game up above the Padres, who are winning the NL West right now for that second bye. And that's a big deal. The difference between getting the bye and just not having to play a 3-game series for your season, it's huge. I know that a lot of people think that there's a difference when you get the few days off and it messes up your rhythm and everything. And that may or may not be true. I tend to think it's not true. But to even make it to the point that you're in the division series, otherwise you pretty much have 50-50 winning a series.
Yep.
3 games, anything can happen. So the big thing I'm looking at now is just keeping up that difference and hopefully expanding on that difference between the Phillies and the Padres and Dodgers.
Yeah. I think getting a bye is definitely really important for this team. Definitely important just for getting the rotation lined up, getting Zack Wheeler time off that he needs, getting the bullpen time off, getting the bumps and bruises of a season healed just for a few days is really important. And there's just not enough of a sample size yet, really, to say that the bye actually hurts a team. And I think everybody's really biased because they've watched the Phillies either they win without the bye twice against a team with a bye, and then lose with it once. So the NL East at least does not have a good track record with a bye, but that's not really super duper upsetting to me. And Fangraphs right now actually has odds for clinching a bye. The Phillies are at 37%. The Dodgers actually are at 41%. So Dodgers and Phillies basically tied. Fangraphs doesn't seem to think the Padres are really the second favorite here to get a bye. They only have about 25% chance. So we'll see how it goes, but I definitely would prefer to get a bye this postseason.
Yeah, some news that we want to talk about before we finish up this episode. Alec Bohm is on a rehab assignment. We're still not exactly sure what the transaction is going to look like to get him back, but he's probably about a week away at this point, maybe not even. Maybe hit a home run the other night. Good to see. You figure he was going to slot back in every day at third base, right?
Yeah, obviously. I think that's pretty obviously what's going to happen. Bohm is kind of interesting. He's gone from sort of overappreciated in his early years, and now he's very underappreciated, I think, with the fan base. He's not great, but he's steady at third base. He's competent. He's I think slightly above average player. And I think it's going to be a lot better playing him at third base every day than occasionally having to watch Otto Kemp play third base, which is just, I never want to watch again. Really. Sorry, Otto.
That's
you're not that
probably the
good.
corresponding transaction. Otto Kemp going down to the minors again is
Yeah.
probably the corresponding transaction, I'd imagine.
I mean, obviously, I think we all know what my preferred transaction would be, but it's not going to happen, unfortunately. But yeah, Otto Kemp's going to go down. It's pretty well assured.
The other big news, Aaron Nola is done with his rehab assignment. He's going to be returning to start on Sunday. The Roku game, wake up early, 11:35 start. So they are going to be going 6-man at least one time through. Ranger Suarez is going to be pitching on Monday. What are your thoughts about Nola coming back, and what are you expecting? He's had decent starts in AAA, but me personally, it feels hard to predict what it's going to look like.
So for me, I'm pretty excited just because more pitching depth is good. Nola is still I truly believe, a above average MLB pitcher. On the other hand, Nola has been showing signs since at least 2022 of slowing down. His velocity has been kind of ticking down a little bit every single year. His K per 9 has been dropped pretty significantly since 22. Yeah, he's not the same pitcher he was. I think everybody knows that. The question is, does he still have enough in the tank to really give them a lot of competent, high-value innings? I think he does, but I think there's still a question to be seen whether it was how much that injury was affecting him early in the season. If he's throwing 92 again, sitting 92 on average and not like 91, 90, that is a massive difference for him.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. We're probably going to get a good idea of how it is pretty soon. At least he has a soft landing spot going against the Nationals, who the Phillies are playing 7 games against in the next couple weeks here. Good timing. Nationals are kind of a disaster. But the pitchers in this series, so tonight, just in about half an hour, we're going to have Jesus Luzardo, which I'm nervous to watch again, going against Brad Lord. We have a rematch of opening day tomorrow night with Zack Wheeler against Mackenzie Gore. Taijuan Walker is going to be coming back on Saturday against Cade Cavalli, who I saw in AAA just about a month ago. And then Nola making his return on Sunday that soft landing spot against Mitchell Parker.
Mm.
Hope for 3 out of 4, right? 3 out of 4 would be nice
Yeah,
here.
hope for 3 out of 4 would be excellent. I think it should be the expectation. I will say that the Nationals, I do not think, in terms of talent level, are as bad as their win percentage says it is. I think they have a lot of very good core pieces to build around for the future. But obviously, as the record shows, they're not there yet. They're still a year or two away from really starting to put things together. But the core pieces for a future Nationals team, I think, are in place for them right now. So I think they are a feisty 400 win percentage team. So the Phillies cannot just sort of walk into DC and hope to just walk over the Nationals. I think you definitely got to go in there and just go about business.
Yeah, Dylan Cruz was returned from the 60-day IL today. So that's, an improvement to the Nationals there. And the Mets, in case those are curious, they have one more game against the Braves tonight before they play 3 against the Mariners over the weekend, including the Little League Classic on Sunday night, which is always a fun game to watch. And then other scoreboard watching, now that we're in that time of season. The Padres and Dodgers are going to be playing each other. So it's an opportunity for the Phillies to pick up some ground on one or both of them by taking care of business against the Nationals. So anything else that you want to say before we wrap up the podcast today, Giles?
So I think that this is, at this point in the season, as we're looking at it, this is absolutely a World Series contending team. I think anybody who's trying to tell you otherwise is just, they're not right. They're wrong. This team absolutely has what it takes to win the World Series. They have the second best odds in baseball right now. If they could go into the playoffs and they could lose, that doesn't, the first round or the second round or whatever, and just look terrible in the playoffs, that really should not change how people view this team. This is a good baseball team. It's a fun team to watch. I fully disagree with people who say it's not a fun team to watch. This is an incredibly fun team, in my opinion.
I don't think they are. I don't enjoy watching this team all that much. It feels very stale to me, but I see your argument.
I do. It's just, they're not as fun, obviously, as 22 or 23, but they do have what it takes to win a title right now, and
they do.
It's just putting it all together, hoping they get hot in the playoffs, and that's just every baseball team. Every baseball team going to the playoffs. It's, are we going to be hot in October? Are we going to run into the team that's hot in October? It's just wait and see. You can't really read into shit. You can't really read into stuff right now in August and look at a couple bad losses and go, I remember they lost a playoff game like that. That means they're going to lose playoff games now like that. It's just not how baseball works. So we're going to wait and see. I'm optimistic. I think this team at minimum makes the NLCS. I think their pitching is too good right now. I think their bullpen is significantly better, actually, in terms of the back end than last year. Last year, they had a bunch of really good guys in the back end of the bullpen. This year, they have a completely elite guy who you are just not going to touch in Duran, who, by the way, I am totally shocked they got for only Taiit and Abel. I'm just stunned about that. I thought I was going to take Miller or Painter, but apparently
Twins fire sale.
Yeah, Twins apparently liked Taiit more than Miller, which, I can actually probably see an argument for. But I'm optimistic for the future of this team. And even if they don't win this year, I think the window is not going to shut in the next 2 seasons. So those are my thoughts for the end of the episode. If you have anything else to add.
Yeah, no, I think we'll leave it off there. I think people are going to be starting to freak out. Maybe they shouldn't. I think the Phillies are very clearly good. They have a chance to go as far as they want to. It's definitely a potential World Series team.
Yep, their best is good enough, as Bill Cowher would say.
But they're very flawed, and I think that we will learn a lot more over this next month about how exactly they plan on going into the playoffs. Like, there's changes that have to be made. Like Jordan Romano and Nick Castellanos, they can't go out here every day. I mean, between the two of them, they have more than -2 WAR. Like, out of those two guys, it's crazy. But
yeah.
But
yeah, I don't want to rant more about Castellanos. I'm out of juice.
Fair enough. So we'll leave it off there. I actually have to get some more work done before I watch the game tonight, which is not fun. Yeah, thank you for joining the show.
Yep.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. In case you were not aware, I don't think I've ever called it out before. In our Phillies Discord server, we do have a question thread. You can also tag me on Reddit if you want to get a question in to have answered on the show. Just wanted to call that out, just because I know we get a couple questions every episode, but I'm sure there are other people that want to share as well. So I will talk to everybody later on after this national series. Actually, in the middle of this national series, because Saturday we'll be recording with Jack Fritz. So I'll talk to you all on Saturday.
Ooh.
And yeah, see you all in a couple days.